A sketchbook hit the sidewalk, a stranger's hand reached out, steady and warm. Elise Carter hadn't meant to spill all her art supplies in the middle of Fifth Avenue. She was just trying not to be late for a blind date her roommate had insisted on. December's chill slipped through her thin sweater, lifting sheets of sketch paper into the air like scattered memories. She was late, flustered, already doubting herself, and she certainly didn't expect the man who helped her to be anyone more than a kind stranger. But 10 minutes later, that same man was sitting at the table she was led to. What started as a mix-up would become something far deeper than either of them imagined. Nathan Hale didn't like New York in December. It wasn't the skin-cutting cold or the overly festive window displays that felt more hollow than warm. And it certainly wasn't the blind dates arranged by meddling friends with too much time and too many good intentions. Nathan zipped up his wool coat tighter as wind swept through the corner of the avenue. Beside him, Leo, his best friend since college, was chattering non-stop. "Come on, Nate, try not to look like you're headed to a funeral," Leo teased. "It's dinner, 2 women, 1 table, low risk, potential upside." "I'm only doing this because you wouldn't shut up," Nathan muttered, stuffing his hands into his pockets. They were half a block from the restaurant when it happened. A crash, papers scattering, something snapping, then a quiet, desperate voice. "No, no, no, not now." Nathan turned instinctively. A young woman was on her knees on the damp sidewalk, her canvas bag torn open, sketchbooks and papers splayed out like a spilled secret. A few pastel pencils rolled dangerously close to the curb. Without thinking, he crossed to her, crouching just as she reached for her things. "You don't have to," she started, glancing up and stopping. Their eyes met. Nathan didn't know what hit him first, the snow caught in her lashes or the expression that flickered between embarrassment and something fierce, like she was used to doing everything on her own. "I've got it," he said simply, handing her a sketchbook. A child's face smiled from the page, vivid, full of life, like it had been caught mid-breath. Her gloved fingers brushed his. "Thanks, I wasn't paying attention. My bag strap snapped." "Happens." They gathered the rest. A stuffed narwhal keychain, a few colored markers, a folder labeled Carter, E. She adjusted the remaining strap quickly. "I can manage. I have dinner plans and I'm already—" "Never mind. Thanks for the rescue." "Glad I was passing by," Nathan said, then added awkwardly, "Have a good night." "You too." She stepped away fast, as if erasing the moment before it could settle. Nathan returned to Leo, who was standing a few feet away, arms crossed and eyebrows raised. "You? Helping a stranger? Nathan Hale? Is this your clone?" "He dropped everything," I reacted. "Don't make it a thing." Leo chuckled. "Let's eat. Our table's waiting." The restaurant smelled of rosemary and wine, its golden lights casting a soft glow across wooden tables. Elise arrived a little early, something rare for her. She adjusted her coat, smoothed her hair, checked the strap of her patch-up bag. A part of her still thought about that strange sidewalk encounter, but she pushed it aside. She had a date with someone completely unknown. She needed to focus. "Reservation under Carter," she told the hostess. "Right this way." Elise followed, trying to calm her nerves. Each step twisted her stomach tighter. She hated uncertainty, and blind dates ranked highest on that list. As they neared the table, the man sitting there looked up. Elise froze. "It's you," she breathed. Nathan couldn't hide his surprise either. He set his water glass down, his posture stiffening as if to regain control. She stood motionless, her brain needing a moment to catch up. "You're Elise?" he asked, though he already knew. "And you're Nathan?" He nodded. "Looks like we're not total strangers after all." A pause stretched between them. I, Elise started, then sat down instead. Leo, who had been standing nearby, quickly read the room and said, "I'll go wait for Jenna at the bar. You two take your time." He disappeared before either could reply. Nathan and Elise sat across from each other. Silence lingered, not awkward, just uncertain where to begin. "I didn't expect to see you again," Elise said softly. I'm not usually the stop and help on the street type, Nathan admitted. Well, I'm not usually the drop everything in pub type, she replied, half laughing. A small smile tugged at his lips. A waiter came by to pour water, then left. Elise glanced around the restaurant. Warm, elegant. The kind of place she usually passed by but rarely entered. You've never been here? Nathan asked. She shook her head. I'm a children's book illustrator. I usually eat where napkins are optional. Nathan looked at her, not in the usual way he assessed people, but truly looked. She wore a forest green sweater under a thrifted coat, mismatched earrings, a faint pencil smudge on her wrist, and somehow, she was the most effortlessly captivating person he'd seen in years. You really an illustrator? Trying to be, she smiled. Freelance, school visits, cover work, doesn't pay much, but it feeds the soul. He nodded, remembering the sketch he'd picked up. A boy's face, full of light. The kid in your drawing, who was he? Theo, my best friend's son. He's on the spectrum. I draw him in all my books. With his permission, of course. He loves being in stories. Nathan's chest tightened. He hadn't expected to care this quickly. Though, this date wasn't your idea? No, my roommate bribed me with wine and threats of ongoing guilt. He chuckled. Leo dragged me here so I could rejoin the human race. Elise laughed, really laughed. No performance, no hesitation. And something cracked open between them, like the first sign of thaw. A while later, the waiter returned for their orders. Elise chose the mushroom risotto and gave a small laugh when she caught Nathan's gaze. If I'm gonna be here, I might as well eat like I belong. Nathan tilted his head. You already do. Their eyes met. For a moment, the noise of the restaurant seemed to fall away. Elise stirred her risotto gently with her fork, her gaze drifting toward the warm overhead light. Nathan watched her, the way her lips pressed in thought, the way her fingers curled around the stem of her glass. He wasn't supposed to be here, not in this moment, not with someone who made silence feel whole instead of awkward. He cleared his throat. You're not what I expected. Elise raised an eyebrow. Good or bad? I don't know yet, he said honestly. You, she said, smiling faintly. I thought someone in finance would be louder, flashier, maybe navy suits, expensive watches, a lot of stock talk. He almost laughed. I've been told I'm emotionally unavailable. Maybe just slow roasted, she teased. He laughed, truly laughed. Just then, Jenna appeared beside their table, flawless in winter white and sleek curls. Behind her stood Leo, hovering awkwardly. There you are, Jenna said, eyes scanning between Elise and Nathan. Elise, you're sitting with… Nathan, Leo interrupted smoothly. Just a tiny mix-up. Elise raised an eyebrow. Tiny? Jenna folded her arms. You've been with the wrong date the whole time. I've been with the right person, Elise blurted, then paused, realizing what she'd just said aloud. The table fell quiet for a beat. Nathan sat straighter. I didn't know who she was. We met outside. It just happened. Leo gave Nathan a crooked smile. Man of the hour. Jenna sighed. Fine. I'll sit with Leo. Might as well salvage the evening. Elise bit her cheek. We can switch, really? Nathan surprised himself. Let's not. Leo held up his hands. Here's a thought. No switching. No pressure. No expectations. Just dinner. Reluctantly, Jenna slid into the seat beside Leo, eyeing the menu like it had insulted her. Elise turned back to Nathan, voice soft. I didn't mean to hijack your date. Neither did I, he said, but I'm not sorry. Their meals arrived and dinner resumed, stilted at first, but gradually smoothing. Jenna offered curated anecdotes and well-timed smiles. Leo countered with charisma and occasional foot-and-mouth moments. But between Elise and Nathan, the energy shifted. Quieter, more grounded. They talked about childhood books, the last thing that made them cry. They answered without filters. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you, Elise said softly as dessert plates were cleared. You didn't, Nathan replied. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed dinner this much. She smiled, a real smile, unguarded. "You make it easy to forget the scripts," he said. They stood together in the lobby while Leo waited outside for a car. Jenna had already vanished into a rideshare without saying goodbye. "Do you need a ride?" Nathan asked. "I'm close. I'll walk. Clears my head." "Do you walk every time someone turns your evening upside down?" She shrugged. "Only when it feels worth thinking about." He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. "If I wanted to see you again, not by accident or wrong reservation, would that be off limits?" Her breath curled in the cold. "Depends," she said, "on whether it's you asking or the version who helped without needing to impress." He held her gaze. "It's me." Elise hesitated, then reached into her coat, scribbled a number on a folded receipt. "All me, but not tonight. Let it sit. Let it be real." She walked off, boots crunching on snow, her figure slowly fading into the silver-lit street. Nathan stood there, holding the scrap of paper like something fragile, unsure whether he'd just been undone or finally seen. Elise had just tucked the slip of paper with her phone number back into her coat pocket when the restaurant door opened again. Jenna walked in, adjusting her silk scarf like every step had to match a rhythm. Behind her trailed Leo, wearing his usual sheepish grin. Elise spotted Jenna first. Her best friend, the mastermind behind this blind date, was heading directly toward their table. "There you are," Jenna said, her eyes flicking between Elise and Nathan. "Elise, you're sitting with—" "Nathan," Leo cut in smoothly, his voice calm but firm enough to interrupt the rising tension. "Just a tiny mix-up." "Tiny?" Elise turned to Jenna, blinking. Jenna crossed her arms, voice steady. "You're at the wrong table. I booked it as a double date. You with Leo, me with Nathan." Nathan sat up straighter, almost as if to clarify. "I didn't know who she was. We met outside. It just happened." Elise looked down, fingers unconsciously twisting her spoon. Jenna glanced at Leo, who was clearly trying not to laugh, and sighed. "Fine, I'll sit with Leo. Call it a change of plans." "We can switch," Elise said quickly. "It's fine." "No," Nathan said, quiet but resolute. Leo raised both hands like a referee calling a timeout. "How about this? No switching, no pressure, just call it an unexpected dinner." Reluctantly, Jenna pulled out the chair, her eyes still fixed on the menu like it had personally offended her. No one said anything else. Elise looked up, her eyes meeting Nathan's, and in that look was a silent agreement. No more explanations, no more defenses, just staying where they were. 3 days passed, and Nathan still hadn't texted, but he'd thought about it many times. The small paper with Elise's number remained tucked in his coat pocket, neat, untouched, yet worn at the edges from how often his fingers found it. He'd held it, opened it, folded it back, not out of doubt, but because something this rare didn't deserve to be rushed. Elise wasn't like anyone else, and that night hadn't been like any other night. Then a message from Leo arrived just as Nathan left a cold, sterile board meeting. "Elise is at the Washington Heights Elementary Art Show tonight. No invite, no pressure, just in case." Nathan read the message, standing still. Something inside Lon muted, stirred, awake. He didn't need another reason. 6:30 p.m. The hallway of the old elementary school smelled of crayons, glue, and children's laughter. The walls were covered in art, animals reading, glittering dragons, rainbow forests. But Nathan saw none of it, until he saw her. Elise stood at the far end, crouched beside a little boy in red sneakers. She was laughing. Not a polite smile, but truly laughing. Eyes crinkled, shoulders shaking. The sound cut through everything and went straight to a part of Nathan he didn't know was still reachable. Her hair was tied loosely, a pencil still tucked behind one ear, her green coat draped over a plastic chair. She hadn't seen him yet, but he saw her clearly. He stepped closer, eyes skimming the artwork, until he saw it. A single framed piece, watercolor, snow on a city sidewalk, a girl on the ground, pages scattered, a man crouched beside her, hand reaching out, no labels, No names, but it was them. And then she turned. Elise didn't gasp, didn't flinch. She just looked at him, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, everything else paused. She smiled, soft, slow, full of warmth. "You came." Just 3 words. But Nathan felt the weight of them land in his chest. He nodded, voice rough. "That's us." Elise looked at the painting. "It's what happened." Then, meeting his gaze, "Color helps me make sense of things." "It's beautiful," he said. "Honest. Raw." "I didn't know if you'd call," she admitted. "But I hoped." "I didn't call," Nathan said gently. "I kept it. I thought about it a lot." A breath passed between them. Then, "Now I want to ask you something, and this time I don't want to just think it." He stepped closer. No rush, no mask. "Can we start over? Not erase the randomness, but begin here, from this moment where you saw me, and I know exactly why I came." Elise didn't answer right away. She picked up a folded program, scribbled on the back, and handed it to him. "I'll do you one better. This Saturday, I'm reading to my students. If you still want something after that, ask again." Nathan looked down at the paper. An invitation. A chance. And this time, he wouldn't fold it away Saturday morning, Nathan returned. Not to a gallery, not to a sleek restaurant, but to a classroom that smelled like crayons and old storybooks. The air was cold. Outside, snow fell lightly, soft sunlight filtering through windows decorated with paper stars. He stepped in, holding a still warm cup of coffee, wrapped in a heavy coat, surrounded by tiny chairs and walls full of drawings. This time, he wasn't looking for anything except one person. Elise. She was kneeling beside a purple dinosaur-shaped book bin, choosing a storybook with near-reverent care. She wore a loose gray sweater, jeans, her hair in a loose braid, and the same pencil tucked behind her ear. Her t-shirt underneath read, "Tiny Humans, Big Ideas." "All right, friends, come here," she called, soft, but every child heard. They rushed in, forming a circle on a colorful rug. Elise sat down with them, folding her legs like one of them. Nathan stood at the door, hand tightening around his coffee. She hadn't seen him yet. But he saw her, clearly. She tilted her head, listening to each question, no matter how silly. When one child asked if Pooh Bear ate spaghetti, she answered seriously, like it was a valid academic topic. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to be adored, she just gave. Elise looked up and finally saw him. Her face didn't light up in surprise, but something softened in her eyes. She finished the book, Winnie the Pooh, of course, then handed the class over to a teacher's aide. She rose and walked over to him. "You came. Not a question, a statement." "I keep showing up," Nathan replied. "Seems like it's becoming a habit." "Good habits are rare." He handed her the coffee. "2 creams, no sugar, if I remember right." He smiled, taking it. "You remembered right." They stepped into the hallway, the sound of children fading behind them. Elise leaned gently against a wall covered in finger paintings. "So," she asked, "still want to start something?" "Yes," he said, no hesitation, "but not the usual way." "What's the usual way?" "Dinner, small talk, candles, all forgotten in 2 days. That's not us." She smirked. "And us?" "A small bookstore," he said. "Creaky floors, old poetry books. You pick one, I pick one. Then we sit in a corner and argue who chose better." Elise laughed, eyes gleaming. "Competitive literature? Let's call it thoughtful critique." "I'm in." They stepped outside. Snow had begun to fall again, light as chalk dust. Elise stopped, turned to him. "I don't want this to be perfect," she said. Nathan's brow furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" "I don't need this to be a fate story or right person, right time. Doesn't have to be perfect," she inhaled. "I just want it to be real." He stepped closer, voice warm and sure. "Then let's be messy, Unscripted, honest. Elise nodded. Then she rose on her toes and pressed a feather-light kiss to his cheek. Real sounds pretty good. They walked away from the school, shoulders brushing, laughter floating behind them like breath in the falling snow. Saturday morning, New York was colder than usual. Snow drifted lazily, tracing soft white streaks across the pavement like chalk. Nathan walked slowly along the front steps of an old elementary school in Washington Heights, holding a warm coffee in one hand and a quiet sense of uncertainty in the other. He hadn't been sure Elise would really wait, or even remember she had invited him, but the moment he stepped into the creaky wooden classroom door, he saw her and knew that every memory he held was real. Elise was seated in the middle of a circle of small children, her hair loosely braided with the familiar pencil still tucked behind her ear. An oversized beige sweater draped around her like a blanket, making her look both fragile and remarkably grounded. The t-shirt underneath read, "Tiny Humans, Big Ideas." The children gathered around her like satellites around the sun, no invitation needed, no hesitation. Elise held a copy of Winnie the Pooh in both hands, reading in a warm, steady voice. Her eyes scanned each little face as if she were reading to every child individually. Nathan chose a quiet corner near the bookshelf and sat down on a tiny chair that barely held him. He placed the coffee on his knee, laced his fingers together, and didn't take his eyes off her. She hadn't noticed him yet. He watched the way she leaned down, just enough to meet the gaze of a little girl raising her hand. "If Pooh eats too much honey," the girl asked, "will his tummy explode?" The children burst into giggles. Elise set the book down and pretended to ponder deeply. "Maybe not explode," she said, "but he might roll like a ball." More laughter. The room shook with it. Elise laughed too, not because the joke was funny, but because joy radiated out from their delight. Nathan smiled without realizing it. Not because she was clever, but because she was real, unhurried, unfiltered. She gave a piece of herself in everything, her eyes, her voice, her attention, as if every child was the only world she needed in that moment. She ended the story with a gentle final line, hand resting on the colorful carpet, voice soft as a lullaby. And Pooh Bear thought, "There's no such thing as a bad day if someone's sitting beside you." Applause erupted. Elise smiled and bowed playfully. She passed the group over to a teaching assistant and stood up, just as her eyes swept the room and landed on him. Nathan didn't stand. He just looked at her, tilting his head slightly, as if to say, "I'm here." She walked toward him slowly, her smile growing with each step. "You came," she said, her voice as warm as late afternoon sun. "I keep coming back," Nathan replied. "Seems like it's turning into a habit." "Good habits are rare." He handed her the coffee. "2 creams, no sugar, right?" She took it, her eyes still on his. Exactly right. They stepped into the hallway, where the sound of children faded behind them. The air was quiet, the walls brick, and paper snowflakes dangled in front of tall glass windows. Elise leaned gently against the row of student lockers, both hands curled around the coffee cup, her gaze steady. "So," she asked, "you still want to start something with me?" Nathan nodded. "I do, but not the usual way." "What's the usual way?" "Dinner, polite conversation, candles, then both people forget it 2 days later. Not bad, but not us." She tilted her head. "And what are we?" "A little bookstore," he said. "Wooden floors that creak, the smell of old pages, shelves taller than we are. You pick a book, I pick a book. Then we sit in a corner and argue about who picked the better one." Elise burst out laughing. "Falling in love through literary debate?" "Let's call it intellectual competition." She nodded. "I think I found my dating genre." They stepped outside. The snow had started falling heavier, white flakes, soft as memories, landing on coats and hair. Elise looked up, letting the snow settle in her braid. Then she turned to him. "I don't want this to be perfect," she said. "No fate, no perfect timing. I just want it to feel true." Nathan stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Then let's let it be just that. A little messy. No pretending. All heart." Elise nodded. Then, naturally and without hesitation, she rose on her toes and pressed a light kiss to his cheek, warmer than any candle Nathan had ever sat across from. True, sounds just right. They walked away from the school shoulder to shoulder, their quiet laughter rising behind them like breath into the falling snow. A week later, Nathan returned to Elisa's classroom. This time, he didn't just stand by the door. He sat inside the circle of children, holding a copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, his voice low and warm, a little hesitant, but filled with sincerity. Elise sat in the corner of the room, quietly watching, not interrupting, not guiding, just smiling softly, her hand resting gently against her lips, as if afraid to shatter the fragile calm that had just begun to take shape. From that morning on, nothing had a name, yet everything began to repeat itself in the most natural way. Nathan started coming to class every week, sometimes just to read aloud, sometimes just to listen as Elise talked to the children about color, about comics, about why the fox in her stories always wore a scarf. Outside the classroom, they never called it dating, but they met. At the park, where Elise brought her sketchbook and Nathan brought coffee. At the little bookstore on Perry Street, where they once argued for half an hour over whether Sylvia Plath or Pablo Neruda evoked stronger emotions. At a tiny cafe tucked into a quiet alley where they shared cinnamon rolls and never had to think about what to say next. No one said, "I love you." No one asked, "What are we?" But everything between them was clear. Nathan, who once lived by numbers, strategies, and control, began to let himself slow down. He didn't need to rush. He didn't need to define. Elise didn't push him away, nor did she pull him closer. She simply was there, like a familiar breath, like a wild daisy growing on the edge of the sidewalk, unplanted but still beautiful. She drew, he read. She listened. He told her things he'd never told anyone. Once, he said, "I used to think if I wanted someone to stay, I had to be more interesting, more attractive, more successful." She simply asked, "And now?" "Now I just want to be myself." One afternoon, they sat together on an old bench in the park. Elise was sketching a child with tightly pressed lips and eyes that seemed to carry an entire world inside. Nathan watched her, watched the way she focused, the way her shoulder leaned forward slightly, the way her fingers held the pencil like she was lifting something sacred. He didn't speak loudly. It was a whisper, almost just for the air. "I like who I am when I'm with you." Elise said nothing. She just reached for his hand, held it, and didn't let go. One Wednesday morning, Nathan turned down a street he had walked 100 times, never once stopping. The air was still misty, early light stretching across the windows of sleepy storefronts. He wasn't in a hurry. He just wanted to walk, slowly. Then he stopped. A tiny bookstore nestled between two tall buildings. The glass fogged slightly from the warmth inside. No flashy signs, just a chalkboard easel that read, "Everything starts somewhere, as author. Elise Carter." His heart paused. The book cover was centered in the window display. A girl sat on a snowy sidewalk, sketchbooks and colored pencils scattered around her. A hand reached in from off-frame, offering her a pencil. He didn't need to read the author's name, he already knew. He pushed the door open. The bell above chimed softly. The air smelled of old pages and coffee. Toward the back, near the children's section, a small table had been set up. Elise sat behind it, signing books for two little girls and their mother. She looked exactly as he remembered. Hair tied back, coat draped over the chair, a faint ink smudge on her wrist. When she looked up and saw him, she didn't gasp or freeze, but something in her posture loosened, as if she had been holding her breath for days without knowing it. And now, it finally made sense. He was here. The girls walked off, book in hand. Nathan stepped toward the table. "Hi," he said. Elise smiled. "Hi." He picked up a copy of the book. On the title page, "Everything Starts Somewhere," Elise Carter. He flipped to the final page. There, in the bottom corner, was a small drawing. Two people sitting across from each other in a tiny bookstore, stacks of books between them. She was laughing. He was looking at her, like time had stopped in that moment. He looked up. I think I'm in this story. Elise lifted her pen, no questions. No need to ask. She wrote on the title page, her handwriting simple and clear, "Thanks for showing up." And years later, if anyone asked how it all began, he would smile and say, "She thanked me for showing up, so I stayed. No, I love you. No, you're my fate. Just a thank you." And it was enough, because sometimes just showing up is everything. There were no promises of forever. No flowers, no sparkling rings, no perfect background music. Their love didn't begin with fate. It began with spilled pencils on a sidewalk and someone who stopped to help. No one needed to ask, "What are we?" because every quiet meeting had already answered that. Softly, gently, enough to know, sometimes all it takes is someone willing to show up and stay.